Hello everyone, this is Mayor Lionel Jordan bringing you another segment of the Mayor's Corner. Today I have the Chief of Staff, Don Marr, with me and the Transportation Department Head, Terry Gulley, to talk a little bit about the inclement weather policy. There seem to have been a lot of questions about our inclement weather policy and treatment of roads and removal of ice and snow over the last storm. So today we wanted to answer a lot of those questions that we've received and talk about what our plans are and how it works and the budgeting for the inclement weather and that sort of thing today. So I'd like to start off today, Terry, and it's wonderful to have you here, you and Don, and tell us a little bit about our inclement weather policy and how it works and what you all to do to prepare for that.
Well, the preparation we do for the inclement weather is we start looking with the National Weather Service. We're in contact with them. We have calls we set in on that are for the region, and they give us information with their best case projections at that point on either ice, snow, temperatures, wind speeds, accumulations, and all those things. And then we kind of plan our preparation for that. If it's something that's beginning with rain, we have more issues with it because it limits our pre-treating ability. If it's going to be starting with snow, we have the ability to pre-treat the roads. And the main purpose of that is to prevent the snow and ice from sticking so well onto the road. If we can prevent that bonding from taking place by treating with the salt brine and the beet juice, then it tends to allow us to be able to push that off with our plows much more efficiently.
So we do use beet juice.
Yes, we've had that on board for 2 years. It's not a straight project or a product that we put out there. We don't put it out there straight. It's somewhere between 10 and 20% of the brine solution. We get 2 or 3 things out of that. It lowers the freezing point of how quickly it refreezes, and it also causes it to not bond as well to the pavement surface. So those are the 2 major benefits out of that.
Okay, and I know that the Chief of Staff is also our emergency manager director. And Don, what is the first things that you do when you started hearing about inclement weather coming in?
Well, Mayor, I think, we get these notifications that all emergency managers in the region receive from the National Weather Service and from the county. We participate on those calls. Terry's group joins me, and we listen to the professionals and weather meteorologists give us projections, times of events are going to start, how it's going to start, like he talked about. And that's done about 5 days before an event is going to take place. And the reason we do that is so that as we get closer to the event, if things change and it's going to go north or miss us, then we basically cease continued emergency activities. If it's imminent and it's going to happen, that's when you'll see press releases coming out notifying the public to prepare. In this last event, we sent out press releases about how to care for your pet, what to do in terms of preparation for the cold, power outages, because we were told there would be a significant ice event. And so the first thing we do is to really become weather people 5 days before the event, and to make sure that we're communicating to the public what we're hearing so that they can prepare supplies, etc. The second part of what we do is we then begin to put into place our operational management, what days we're going to go to shifts, how we're going to pre-treat, if we're going to be able to pre-treat. We begin communicating with other partners, Red Cross, for shelter preparation if we need it, the school district in terms of their road needs, our emergency management, and our public safety teams to make sure that they're prepared for impending events. And we also work with our fleet to make sure that we're prepared, our equipment is up, operating, working, ready to go. So
let's talk a little bit about the inclement weather history. How have we historically handled a lot of these type of situations?
Well, I mean, every one of them's a little bit different. This one in particular started with about 1 inch of sleet hit us. So that makes it more difficult because it packs down very hard and it essentially turned into a solid 1 inch sheet of ice. This event, we went into it with how it was supposed to be a rain event prior to turning over to maybe ice, then to snow. We were not planning on pre-treating, but at the last minute, the rain that we got was so light that we went ahead and did pre-treat. We tend to, our hills, we make a big effort to try and keep east-west routes open, which mostly is north and township in the center part of the town. Otherwise, you're going all the way to Joyce or all the way south to 15th to get around the mountains. So we make a big effort there. We pre-treated those with actually salt and sand to help give traction as it did occur, because it would dissolve slower. But we also went to putting the brine out because we were getting the rain in such a light manner that we felt like we would get some good out of that. So we ended up doing a pre-treating on this. In the past, we've done all those things. We evaluated as we get to it. The big snow we had 3 years ago, you know, we knew it was going to be snow, and it was there was a lot there to push. It was very light snow for this area. Usually it's wetter. That was more of a Kansas type dry snow. We were getting drifts. So we were able to push a lot of that off immediately. We were pushing 15 inches of snow off with one pass. So we got down to where we had a more traction base in that. It lasted a long time because of pure volume. Mm-hmm. But in general, December and the 40 plus years I've lived here, it's rare. That's the biggest snow I remember in the last 40 years in December. Usually that's more of a January with those temperatures, January, mid-January to late January type event.
How many pieces of equipment do we have?
We've got 11 vehicles that are designated for nothing but this, that either have salt brine or the ability of spreaders. We've got 5 salt brine units, 3 of those with plows, and then we've got 6 spreader trucks that we are putting out the sand and the salt mixture, or just sometimes it's both, sometimes it's sand. It's varying on the temperatures and the amount of either we're trying to get traction or melting at that time. Putting out in the middle of the night salt, it requires the sun to really get the activation, so we use less salt at night, more in the daytime. So we're looking at all that, just to give you an idea. And then we also have a belly plow, which is a mid-mounted plow, which we can get down pressure to help push the ice off. We were using that. We had our road grader on the road, and we also even contracted with a local contractor to put 2 more graders out there. And once it loosened up any, we were really plowing it off in a hurry. We were applying the brine and the salt and then getting the sunlight to start getting that loosened. It was really Monday or Tuesday before we started getting much of that.
One thing I would add is that our treatment here at the city, our budgets related to it, are typical to what you would see in a southern-related town. We're kind of put in the southwest or southern region of the country, and so our equipment and our budgets are in line with how many cities that face that inventory handle it. We're not a northern city. I worked in Michigan, went to school up in Michigan. A very different amount of equipment, very different amount of supplies because of the frequency of it. The last 2 years, we haven't missed a single day of work due to a weather-related event. So you have to balance the taxpayers' money between good expenditures for equipment that aren't going to sit and not be utilized, but also the ability to handle an event when it happens. The other thing that most southern cities deal with is temperatures that are closer to the freezing point, 28 to 33 degrees, where you get that activation even at the time that the event is going on. So we had a little bit of a difference this time because we were in 8 degrees and 11 degrees and 18 degrees. And so whether you're using brine or beat or activities, there's not a lot of things that work less than 20 degrees. So I think what happens in a lot of these things is if you look back at the 2009 ice storm and the activities that we were dealing with, same equipment, same staff, no budget reductions. I think that's been a question that you've received a lot of is, has the city over these years, because we haven't had events in 2010 or 11 and 12, have we cut the budget? Absolutely not. In fact, we increased the budget the last time we actually had events because of the volume that we had with the large snowfall, and then that stayed in the base that we carried forward each year. So we've actually had an increase in our budget amounts around this. But we're in line with how southern cities handle these events because we don't get the frequency to do it and it doesn't justify the expenditure. When we have an event like this that happens where we have some of these unusual circumstances, we do exactly what Terry just talked about. We contract with other people to add equipment and be able to process it more quickly. I also want to remind us that we're dealing with 450 miles of road, and you can double that number for lane miles. So it's a significant amount of roads that we're dealing with. About 75% of that, or 75 miles of that, Terry, I think, has told us are state roads that right now that the city is handling. And so that's something that we've learned to work after this event to create a good partnership with the state, to maybe have them assist us with some of those roads so that we can get to the side and local roads more quickly.
How many staff do we have? And let's just take this particular storm. How much staff did you have out there on the streets?
Well, we had 56 folks assigned to, divided up. We had 20 in the daytime, 19 on second shift, and 17 on third shift at night. And we started on December 5th on Thursday at 4 a.m. prior to it freezing. We were doing the pre-treating that day once we realized it wasn't going to rain. We did not go off shifts. We were 24/7 around the clock till December 14th at 10 a.m. last Saturday. That was the point where we felt like we had not all the ice off, but we had every road passable and every call answered that we had gotten at time. Just to give you an idea, that was 4,039 man hours, 24/7 for that time period. So, that went on for a long time. And some of the materials we used on that, we put out 2,238 tons of sand on the streets. Salt brine was equivalent to 75,000 gallons. As the temperatures fall, we would add either calcium chloride or beet juice. We put a total of 11,000 gallons of that out. And we had stockpiled 450 tons of salt. We used 425 in this event. These numbers are pretty close to the equivalent of what we used on the storm 3 years ago when we had almost 20 inches of snow. So we hit it hard, the difference in this one being that the ice pack underneath it was so thick, and we also had so many days of sub-freezing weather. We went about 4 days before we even saw much melting occurring because the sun was not out. So there was a lot thrown at it. We continue to do that as we have events, we adjust it, but all that equipment's out there every event. It's just the conditions dictate on, is it 3 days to get the road clear, 9 days, or in the case of the big storm 2 years ago, it was 13 straight days, 24/7 around the clock.
Well, how are the streets prioritized in the city? And a lot of people have asked me, why are some streets prioritized over other streets?
Well, I mean, things we look at is, number one, safety of the citizens. If I don't have any place for you to drive safely, if I get you off your hill or your street, then I'm putting you in danger by putting you out there on a street that is just as dangerous as the one you came off of. So we prioritize with our main arteries first. We go down to collectors second. We really concentrate on hills like Cleveland, North Street, Township, especially if they're east-west connectivity, because that's the major problem. We have quite a bit of routes north-south, but we don't have but 2 or 3 in the heart of the city. So we really concentrate on that. And eventually then we roll out more in the residential neighborhoods. Rockwood Trail's another one. We've got a lot of people on top of Mount Sequoia. We try and give at least 1 or 2 safe ways down that as soon as we can. We treat those heavily, and I believe, 10 years ago, we put up road closed signs at the bottom of all those, and they stayed that way till the sun melted them. We had 4 old trucks at that time. We have a lot more equipment now, and we continue to look at expand that. And all the equipment we use is all usable in our day-to-day operations. We've got slide-in equipment that we put in there, but there are crew trucks that we use. So we don't stockpile specialized equipment like we used to, where those 4 trucks set except when they were treating the roads. So we try and maximize our efficiency with our equipment, stretch our dollars as far as we can.
Yeah, I would add that when we're prioritizing roads, we get that question that you just said, what order do you do it? And we want it to be that once you get out into the main thoroughfares, that you can get through the city. It gets you to commercial districts, employment,
hospitals, and schools.
That's a significant priority of ours. It's the emergency response routes that are necessary to get patients to our hospitals and medical facilities quickly. We also, even this time, got a list from the school district on what roads are best in terms of getting them back on a modified bus schedule. That's probably, so we start with our major arterials, we look for our hospital routes, we look at our school routes. But I want to remind people that our school district goes outside the city of Fayetteville limits. And so they're working not only with Fayetteville, but areas of Elkins and Goshen and Springdale when they're making their decisions. And we have a list from them that we work towards, just as we do with our emergency response and hospital units. It doesn't do us any good, though, to get a side road clear and get to College or MLK or 265 and have it be a sheet of ice. That's really where people, if we can get them to those roads, then we are able to keep traffic moving.
Well, and then there's been a lot of questions about, a lot of folks believe that we've made budget cuts in our inclement weather plan and cut back on equipment. Or how would you all address that?
Well, I'd say that's not true, in that we've added extra money 3 to 4 years ago that stayed in the budget. We're continually looking to add 1 or 2 pieces of equipment most years. We've got 2 more plows that we're going to be putting in. And I've got money that I've manipulated by getting rid of pieces of equipment that we don't use a lot and turning some of that money into a couple more spreaders also. So we're actually going to be adding to it over the course of this winter. And something new we've expanded, we've never done before, was renting the use of graders by contractors to help. And that seemed to play out very well. We were Mount Comfort, Weddington, 15th Street, some of the major routes that it was really stuck to. We plowed that quickly to the side once we got it loose, and it opened up those routes, all 4 lanes completely, so it was not hampering the traffic like it was where it just had ruts on the road and caused issues if people were changing lanes and turning. So I think we've expanded that over the last few years, not reduced it.
And just like Terry was talking about equipment, the belly plow that we hear referred to has been very effective. That sits underneath a vehicle with down pressure. It will cut ice, not just push snow or loose ice that's come up from the pavement. That was a $140,000 investment by the city for that one plow. And to put it in perspective, we have one and the state has one. So the fact that we added that, we have additional plows, because as we put plows on our trucks, you'll see them sometimes spark as they're hitting the pavement. Right. It wears those plows out. We have to replace them. Terry has increased his budget, and we actually go into a season being prepared with extra ones to replace those as we have an event, many of which will be replaced after this initial one. So the budget has been anything but cut. We actually have more money than we had, I believe, when you came into office, because of some of the events that you dealt with that got into the base of the new budget. We've just been lucky, and I think for 2 years people really forgot about activities because we hadn't had any.
Yes. So now, reflecting back on this storm, how do you see us making improvements in the future?
I want to add a couple of things on that, because as the emergency manager of the city, every event we go through, we do a post-assessment on it. And I think the first thing is we need to create better partnerships with the state. We're doing a lot of state road work. And, our plan at your direction is to really work to continue to develop those relationships so that we can get their assistance on some roads and get our guys off maybe doing some other things in the city. We're not going to do that at the expense of getting those roads clear, but we want to push to develop a better relationship with that. I think the other thing is to make sure that as we take equipment to our equipment committee of the council and we look at, addressing fuel efficiency and four-wheel drives, that we also keep in mind that we have events that we have to handle. And so we can't reduce our fleet in every level, that we don't have the ability that when we want to add plows to them, that we've bought equipment that can handle the weight loads of pushing snow. So we're evaluating that balance. We have a number of CDL drivers in the city, not only within the transportation division, but water sewer, within our solid waste division, our parks and rec. And so we're also looking at, whether some of those other divisions might be able to help with some additional equipment. And really it boils down also to educating our citizens. And one of the items that we've talked about doing is we're getting to the size of a population where we need to develop snow routes. You'll see that in many larger cities, so that it's very clear to citizens which roads you're going to do first. It's probably the most asked question we've gotten. And when people say to us, well, why don't you tell us which roads are clear? If you go and look at any northern city, or you have dialogue with those city managers, their advice is that you don't publish that. People have different confidence levels of driving on the snow. Some people grew up in the north and will get out on it initially. Some people have never driven on it. Some people drive too slow and they stall and slide. Other people drive too fast. The minute that the city starts telling people what road is safe without knowing their individual driving skill sets and their confidence levels, then we could be creating unsafe, security for people, and we don't want to get into that. We're clear of them; they can assess their ability to drive on them. But I think communicating which roads are going to be primary snow routes would be another thing that we could add and improve in terms of our communication. And then, thanks to you and your Facebook world, we're learning that we need to provide good updates just about what we're doing. We can't respond to it because when we do that, if we respond to every person who wants us to come clean their road, we're pulling people out of quadrants that we're working on. We become inefficient. The one thing that I will say to people that they probably don't want to hear is dead-end cul-de-sacs are not our first priority. Roads that connect and get people out and our major arterials are where we spend our focus first. And so we understand that's a frustration for people who might live in those environments, but typically our goal is to get to the maximum number of citizens that can move. And so streets where we have limited connectivity or large households, we'll get to them. They're just not the first priority.
Terry, would you like to add something to that?
Well, one other thing we really discovered this time, and we live in a hilly community, but one of the issues that can cause us a lot of issues, and a street in particular I saw it on was like Hammond Street over near Root School. It's very steep, and you go on the bottom of it. We had people hung up. We ended up backing up it and salting it or sanding it, and we got traction on it. But we had 3 or 4 cars parked along the side of the street on both sides at the bottom. Makes it very hazardous for us to try and go through there and get traction to get it. So, well, I realize you may have to park on the street to not get in your driveway. By doing so, you tend to inhibit our ability to do those streets. And it really infringes on if it's a street that we could grade with a grader. It's a large piece of equipment, and it's gonna slide around some too. It's digging into that ice and it'll pull it sideways. One that we've got a foot of clearance on either side is not one we can safely grade. So by minimizing parking there, you help us with the ability to get on more streets and get them cleared quicker. So that would be something that the public could really help us out with.
Well, what advice would you give citizens as they watch this program today about what they need to do related to winter inclement weather events? What is the first thing they need to do? And let's just take.
The first thing that comes to mind is read the releases coming out of the city. And as they get closer to the date of the projected event, it's more accurate, and they really should plan. We're sending that out to say you could be in your home for some time without power. You could be in your home for some time before this street gets cleared. And so make sure that you're prepared for it. If you need to be able to get out, you are probably going to want to find a parking lot somewhere that you can walk from so that you'll be able to get accessibility quicker if that's an important part for your workday, as an example. But I think reading that information, because we're communicating it as soon as we hear it, we're sending it out. We did it every day that we had an update from the National Weather Service. The other thing is, if you have an issue, we have a number that we publish. Call us. We get a list. We put it on a working list. You don't have to call us 10 times about it. Once you give it to us, we've got it on a list, and we're working from that list. And we take those calls seriously, but they are done in the order that we talked about. Arterials, collectors, hospitals, schools, side streets, dead end and cul-de-sacs. And just know that that's some of the priority. And then if, we actually make our expenditures and our capital requests based on what citizens want us as a government to provide. You hear it all the time, people calling you. So, if it's a greater priority to have another plow, that's $140,000, and that's a greater priority than maybe some other service item that we're doing as a city, share that with your elected officials, because as we go through the budget process, we can certainly tailor it to meet what people want it to do. Just realize you're balancing that between good stewardship of those tax dollars. So when we get into $200,000 pieces of equipment and you're talking about getting close to $250,000, it's something you want to use a lot. Right. And get a benefit from.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we did get several phone calls on was when we did start really plowing the streets. A lot of people had got out, cleared their driveways, and we were coming along and then busting that loose. It was leaving a windrow of material along there, and sometimes it was blocking your driveway. That's something we need the citizens' help in, that because to be able to plow that off, we've got to have enough speed to do that. It's usually 10 miles an hour or less. It's not fast, but it moves it there, and it does create that windrow. And we do not have the ability to go back and push that out of everybody's driveway. So we need your help on that. We try and inform people, by getting this off the street, you've got the ability to get out of there if you can just get out of your driveway. And then we work hard to get that off there as quickly as possible. And I mean, if we have someone that physically can't do it, we will try and help them out. They just need to let us know that. But we ask all the able-bodied to please help us out in making that so that we can reach more people in the same amount of time.
And I do want to add one thing on that. That's really important on sidewalks, because our ordinances in the city, the sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owner that sidewalk goes through. The city maintains the sidewalk, but in terms of clearing in an event, it's the property owner. And so as we've watched people struggle trying to walk down some of our sidewalks that weren't cleared at all, and then get out in the middle of the road, it just creates a more dangerous situation. So we want to remind citizens of that responsibility, encourage them to do that. If they have a neighbor who's not physically able to do it, to try to help through the neighborhood to get some of those cleared, so our pedestrians who might have parked in a parking lot that they need to get to would have a means to get to that.
Yeah, and that's one of the observations we really noticed. I know Don had seen this too. Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, it was mind-blowing on how many people were walking along the highway or in the highway on MLK down in the south part of town, between especially college students getting out in all the new apartment complexes. They were walking. The sidewalks were heavily iced. It was safer traction-wise to walk in the lane, and they were walking right in the 4-lane along the street. So I make people aware when they do get out to really watch for pedestrians, because there was a lot of folks in the street.
So if a citizen wanted to contact the city about inclement weather information, or once it hits, about getting a road cleared or sidewalk cleared, what is the contact numbers? And email, Facebook, what is it?
I mean, once it starts, the best thing is we forward our phones to the supervisor that's on with that particular shift. They answer the phone, or else call us at 575-8228. Or if you do not reach someone there, call CDC, and they will, the central dispatch, and they will, the non-emergency line, and they will contact us. We've got both getting phone calls from them, and we also have them on our radio system, so they're calling us with those requests as quick as they get them.
And that number is 587-3555, and then they select the option that says non-emergency calls. It might feel like an emergency, but it's not an emergency in the sense that someone's robbing you, or in those cases, dial 911. You also can use the city's Facebook,
Right.
Fayetteville, Arkansas. Many times you will share things on your page, so I think your page is a good resource. Yes. The city's website, Fayetteville-ar.gov, is another resource for people to use. We also, for some of our divisions, will use Twitter to communicate information about closings, cancellations, and things of that nature.
Okay. Well, as we close today, any final thoughts?
I think that covered it.
We just hope it doesn't snow a lot more, Mayor, but we're prepared for it. You know, what I do want to say to citizens is, if you think back over the history of the performance of the Transportation Division and how we've handled large events like a 2009 ice storm and largest snow in the history of the city in 2010, was that when it was? We have the same crews, we have great equipment, we have a larger budget, but just know that weather factors play a factor in doing this in the South. And so the colder you see it, the more prepared you need to be, and the greater challenge it will be for our division. But we will be out there 24/7 like we were, working to get them cleared for the citizens.
As we close today, folks, I want you to understand that we're doing everything possible to keep you as safe as we possibly can and to clear the roads as quickly as we can. I watched our staff, our crews, our road crews work 24 hours a day. They went for over 7 days, and we are doing and will continue to do the very best that we can. And I'm very pleased with the performance of the staff in this last storm, and we will continue to provide you with that type of service. And we've talked about a lot of the questions that you've asked, and I hope we've addressed those. And we have given you the contact numbers on our policies and plans and what we're doing in the city. So until I see you again, you have a great day, and hope to see you real soon.